Fallout 4 just saw the release of one of its most feature-rich visual mods or visual overhauls in a long time. This mod does a ton for affecting your Commonwealth, changing weathers, sounds, visuals, interiors, and even things like water. It really is a one-stop shop to make Fallout 4 look pretty awesome in 2020, and I would say one of the best visual mods ever to release. In addition to that, I'm going to show you a few other visual mods to come out over the past few months that will go really well in tandem with that, or you may just want to download for your game. Some other mods that will overhaul or transform Fallout 4's Commonwealth in a very positive way. If you guys enjoy the content or want to keep up to date with the Fallout 4 or even New Vegas and Skyrim modding scenes, you can get subscribed. Later this week, I will have a pretty special update on Fallout New Vegas mods that I think a lot of you are going to really enjoy. Some big stuff happening over there, and even a look at some pretty special upcoming mods for Fallout 4 that you should definitely be excited for. But without further ado, let's take a look first at Natural and Atmosphere Commonwealth 10, also known as NACX Legacy Edition. So that name may sound familiar to you because Natural and Atmosphere Commonwealth is a mod that has already released for Fallout 4 and Skyrim. But this 10th Legacy Edition is really a huge overhaul or feature addition over what is currently available in the typical Natural and Atmosphere Commonwealth. It just does a lot more and does a lot more better. But even further, the mod author behind this one, Looping, is actually leaving the Fallout 4 modding scene. He's created some incredible mods, including this one. It's kind of almost like his swan song in many ways. And without going too in depth, he basically describes how he's leaving because he just doesn't play the game anymore. Most of his mods he was making for himself to enhance his enjoyment. But I must say, this is one incredible last mod, as it is a huge overhaul for Fallout 4, and actually almost difficult to categorize in one singular thing. What this mod will do at its core is improve the visuals of Fallout 4, but it does so in a variety of ways. Right off the bat, you'll notice it adds in a variety of new weathers and weather types, some of those having unique or custom visuals and sound effects. Even further, there's just new visuals across the board with Fallout 4. It just makes changes to Fallout 4 in general. It also has support for ENB with an optional download, but you could also use other ENBs if you want to change things up, and has built-in support for using other ENBs also. But even further, not only does it just have kind of a blanket tone, brightness, or saturation change, but a lot of visual effects changes. You will see certain things pop up in the world as you're going through at nighttime or while some weathers are active, and some overhauls to interior lighting and how exactly that works. And even a few other minor things like visual effects when you get shot by an enemy, or when using a stim pack, or even when you put on sunglasses and it is a sunny day. But one of the really cool parts about this mod is basically all of this is modular, and you can do a lot of tweaking or setting adjustments with many of the new features this brings to Fallout 4. If you hate some of the minor features and the visual effects it adds, many have a toggle option where you could just turn them off completely. If you think the interiors this adds in are way too dark, you can tweak that. If you think the overall brightness is too low, you can turn it up. It really is one of those mods that I think for many of you, if you want either just an out-of-the-box make your game look better, or separately, if you want to spend hours tweaking this to be perfect, this mod is your definitive solution. And one of the things that's pretty interesting about this mod is how all of this really comes together really well. Although these are all separate features, they all mesh, and while you're playing in game, you don't really think about them as separate features, as it's really just weather, visual, special effects, and lighting all coming together at once with some sound in the background. The weather and lighting changes to come with weather are easily one of the most profound impacts, and one of the really cool parts about this mod in particular is it has a lot of different weathers. It's not just sunny or raining or cloudy, there are many different iterations of that. Another one I really like, and again this is toggleable, there's several nuclear weathers, different takes on rad storms, firestorms, or acid rain that can fall down as you're playing the game, and it makes you scared and want to run for shelter, but also makes Fallout 4 feel like an apocalyptic game, which it is. One of the cool things you could do with weather are either just choose which weathers are active, or actually set a certain season, or that the game will flow through seasons. So you can make it so it is going to more consistently be some of those nuclear weathers. You'll always have some of those in the background if you want a more post-apocalyptic experience, or a bit more simply, a fall, where it'll be a bit foggier, you'll have rain more often, and the sun just won't be out as much compared to summer, where it's significantly more often you'll have clear day weathers and clear skies. Or one of the pretty cool options, especially for longer term playthroughs, you could actually have it so it'll cycle through these one by one and in order. So you'll be able to actually distinguish in game while it's one season to another. And through this brief time lapse you could see in the background, hopefully it showcases just how dynamic this mod can be. Different weather changes are just one, plentiful. There are many different types of weathers, but also the impact it has on the visuals. In general, the mod offers things like depth of field and makes the game look significantly better. Again, in the background, I have no other visual mods active. Fallout 4 looks better just as a result of this particular mod. No other ENBs are going on outside of the NAC ENB. Another pretty cool aspect is nights, as nights will really vary with this mod installed, as some nights you'll just have a full-on pitch black night where you can see next to nothing, while other times, depending on the weather or what's going on at the moment, there will be a bit more illumination. You'll be able to actually traverse and see with just the moonlight, which is pretty similar or akin to how it works in real life, but not many mods offer something like that. From time to time, you can actually find things like volumetric mist, cloud shadows, radiation throughout the air, and even splashing while a rainstorm's going on, in addition to the actual lightning in some of the clouds. Plenty of mods out there have full-on lightning strikes, but very few really capture having lightning in the clouds and seeing the cloud illumination or the lighting of the whole area around you, which this one does capture. As you go in some of the interiors, you'll definitely notice how light sources are more impactful now. There isn't as much light overall if you're using the default setting, but actually using a flashlight or some of the interior lamps or lights will carry a lot more light, and they just look more so like a source of light. In addition to the lighting and weathers, this mod also comes with several optional presets that you can combine together for just an in general different visual look. You can use these one at a time or stack them all together for a very unique look. This is definitely one of those features that it'll either really appeal to you or really not. I'm not personally someone who likes to tinker this much. I kind of like how it looks out of the box, but really this is easily going to be one of the most versatile weather and just overall visual mods you could download right now for Fallout 4, and I think one of the best ones. If you want to make your game look better, if you want to have a cooler all-around experience and overhaul the Commonwealth comprehensively, this is the mod you should download. But a few other mods that I certainly think you should download with Natural and Atmospheric Commonwealth 10 are some landscape mods that will really work great in tandem to this. The first one being Desperados Overhaul. Fallout 4 fans have had this long love for Fallout New Vegas, and Desperados Overhaul is going to bring New Vegas's landscape into Fallout 4 somewhat. Rather than the rich green landscape of the Commonwealth with trees and foliage everywhere, with Desperados Overhaul you're going to get a familiar desert landscape. And just an aside, in the background I'm still using NAC 10, just using the summer climate preset, which works really well with this particular mod also. This is actually by the same mod author who made the very popular Dust Bowl Overhaul in the past, but that has since been depreciated, and this is definitely a worthy successor. It'll make Fallout 4 overall much more barren, and one of the big impacts you have with this is you could see way farther. It's one of those things that really does change the overall vibe of the Commonwealth. One thing I really like that this mod does is it does somewhat have little biomes. You'll find some areas being on the very barren side, where it's sand and a few cacti here or there. Others have a bit more going on with minor foliage. Still distinctively a desert sandy environment, but not quite that of a typical Commonwealth environment. But then towards the outskirts of the map, you could actually find a bit more of a green area. Several trees, a lot more grass is grown in. As you explore the map overall, though, you'll large in part find something like this. You occasionally find little variations on that, and I think it's done really well and gives this a lot more flavor across an entire playthrough. But if you feel like the whole Fallout New Vegas in Fallout 4 has been overplayed at this point, alternatively, we also do have a forest, which, as you could probably guess, is more or less going to make it so the Commonwealth is overtaken with foliage and a forest landscape. And specifically, this mod will not disable precombines, which makes it pretty valuable over some potential alternatives, and in general, doesn't have a huge hit on performance. So a few things this mod does a bit differently than some other grass overhauls. It definitely pays attention to roads and interiors. So unlike with certain other mods, you're not going to find grass all throughout and over your roads. They will still be roads, and there still will be clearings with this one. Also, I just feel like the foliage isn't too overbearing. The trees and grass where they do land are pretty appropriate. It feels like Fallout 4's Commonwealth is overgrown, but not overgrown to the point where it's ridiculous, where some other mods have been. And I think for me, that's why this really does land. In particular, if you're using this with Natural and Atmospheric Commonwealth 10, you can get some pretty awesome looking moments where fog will roll in. You'll have that dense tree line and your view will be truly obscured. It definitely does change up Fallout 4's Commonwealth in a more comprehensive way. You'll find pretty consistently this amount of trees or foliage in most places outside of settlements or certain towns, but a lot of the trees will go right up until that town or sometimes invade it a little bit. Overall, Overall though, I would say it's one of those mods that adds in a forest to Fallout 4, and if you were looking for a forest, it doesn't do anything wrong. I actually had less of a performance hit with certain other green mods while using this one, and again, it doesn't suffer from some of those problems that certain alternatives definitely have. But an overhaul coming to Fallout 4's Commonwealth in a bit of a different way is the Universal Working Bathroom Fixtures mod, which, as the title does suggest, will make it so bathrooms across the Commonwealth now function. Whether you're in the Institute or in some random school or abandoned shop, you'll find that the sinks are drinkable, the toilets are sittable, and of course, the showers do turn on after you take your clothes off. Honestly, more so than anything else, this mod is just funny to me. It does make the Commonwealth lore friendly in many ways. It is a more immersive experience, although it doesn't have a ton of functional benefits to your character. And this mod does a good job of not being overbearing in a way. It's not that every toilet now functions, it's toilets that should have functioned before now do actually function. You'll still find the occasional broken toilet or sink, but there might be a working one a stall or two over. But then we do have one that may be very valuable for many of you, and that is Baka ScrapHeap. This is an interesting one that really there isn't much for me to show, but more or less what it was meant to do is actually built originally around sim settlements, but large in part works with any script heavy mod for Fallout 4. So by default, Fallout 4 loads 70 megabytes of memory to read scripts. Sim settlements is a very script heavy mod, and there are many other script heavy mods out there, and what this mod does is double the amount of memory allocated for that. So if you're using a ton of pre-built cities or just heavy into a sim settlements playthrough in general, this mod will likely improve your performance a lot, and hypothetically will do so for any other script heavy mods out there. And for me, it did have a bit of a boost towards performance and even loading or importing it sometimes. Overall, it's a very easy, simple download to keep in the background if you are using any of these mods, or really just in general, so I definitely wanted to give it a shout out in this one. But one final mod that is a bit deceiving, at least at first glance, is the AR-15 Modern Laser AR. This is a pretty cool one because, of course, this mod looks like an AR-15 for Fallout 4. Oh great, another one. But in reality, this is actually a new laser rifle for Fallout 4 that is distinctively made to look like a more traditional AR you could find in the real world. In Fallout 4 by default, and even in the modding scene, many lasers are boxes. They don't actually look like more traditional weapons. Unfortunately, with this one, it actually does look like a more traditional weapon, and I think looks really cool. It features a variety of customization options and attachments as you would expect from an AR platform. It does have a full-on rail system with top, bottom, left, and right rails, and also all kinds of scopes and sights that you can tweak or change to your liking. Overall, doing what a lot of other AR mods would. But when it comes to firing and animations, and even just using in first person, I think it looks pretty awesome. It's a pretty cool crossover for Fallout, taking some of the most popular weapon mods, but also making it a bit more appropriate for the Fallout landscape. And it also has one pretty cool damage feature. As you can see, some of these lasers are shooting different color bolts, and there's a reason for that. As you're creating this weapon, you could actually change the wavelength it will fire, and depending on the wavelength, it's going to be a trade-off between fire speed and damage. And it also has a change to color. I thought this was pretty cool because if you want just pretty good fire speed, but also pretty good damage, you go in the middle, or if you want something more like a DMR, you'll have to make some trade-offs or convictions for that. I like when mods have balance options like it, and it was handled pretty well with this one. It certainly isn't overpowered and integrated really well. And overall, it touts a pretty good line of being appropriate for those who prefer more modern items for the game, but also those who just want a traditional or true to form Fallout experience. But overall, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this one. Hopefully you guys found this video informative. Hopefully you are going to download some of these mods. NAC10 in particular is a great one mod download to make your game just look, sound, and feel a lot better. If you don't like certain features, you could pretty easily toggle them off or customize them a bit further. And I think Natural and Atmospheric Commonwealth 10 combined with just like one good environmental mod, then you could have a great looking Fallout 4 just 2 mods deep. For me at least, it's definitely going to be a definitive one, and you'll likely be seeing it a lot more in future videos. But that said, hopefully this video was helpful if nothing else. As always, again, I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.